there is so much more than you think to building a property portfolio in Dubai, such as building a company structure around that portfolio, how to protect your assets, the laws that you've probably never heard about. And today, once again, we're joined by Amin. So Amin, let's dive straight into it. Let's talk about the structure around a property portfolio. What does it look like?
Okay. So first of all, I just want to say that, because a lot of the clients that are coming in from Europe and elsewhere, the way business is actually being done in the UAE in terms of setting up licenses is very different. Every single type of business or activity that you would like to do has to be registered based on that specific description in the Dubai Economic Department. So coming back to my point, if their objective is to buy properties and to sort of generate income off of that, one of the most successful structures at the moment is, basically using a holding company to hold your assets, property portfolios in it, and having a real estate property management free zone company linked to it for the purpose of just managing that business. Now, the holding does not come with UAE visas or having your corporate bank account linked to it. So it's essentially just a basket. So the free zone company would then be the actual running company that will have the corporate bank account they'll be able to allow individuals to get their UAE residencies. Now, one may ask, why have a holding company?
I was going to ask that, yeah. So tell us.
So I had an incident a couple of years ago where I had a South African client who basically bought properties and he was holding them under a free zone company. The banks consider that to be a very high risk structure. So we basically suggested, instead of holding the properties under a free zone, we could just basically set up a holding company just for the purpose of buying and holding properties as a basket, and then have a running company such as a free zone linked to it. So essentially think of it as an umbrella. So the holding owns the free zone company. The free zone is your running business where you have your corporate bank account and your residency. And that would essentially be the best structure.
Okay.
And it worked out. So the whole process of setting up the corporate accounts for them became very easy. Now, the reason I say this, the reason why structures are very important is because it's more so to do with the banks. The banks are the one that would classify certain business activities to be a high risk activities. And if they disclose that as a high risk activity, then it almost becomes very difficult to open a corporate bank account.
Yeah, because I've actually had this problem with a lot of my friends of mine who are in that sort of digital marketing world.
Yeah.
They can't really, it's hard to kind of explain to the banks about what the activity is, where the money's generated. And I've noticed at that point, it takes ages to get banks set up, right?
Yeah.
Even for me, when I had my videography company, it took me at least 7 weeks.
Yep.
Because I registered in a free zone, but then I had to justify like where I'm going to be working from, how my money's going to be made.
Yep.
Because, I was operating on the mainland, but I wasn't really like, it was just a little bit of so many parts to this moving puzzle. And I just thought, it does take a long time to get a personal bank account just instantly.
Personal bank account is very easy, actually. But yeah, corporate has become, that is the issue there. So coming back to my point, this is why Nimbus Consultancy, us, the team and the colleagues of mine, I have to basically, give a shout out to them. They're very meticulous about what is the structure and how the banks would react. So we think of it as working backwards. So we want to look at, are the banks going to be giving us trouble for setting up a specific type of structure? Yes, no. If it's a no, then we come up with an alternative solution.
Okay.
And so this is why I think, for real estate, the only structure that generally has been very, very popular at the moment without having any issues, and it's been a very seamless experience for the clients and ourselves, is literally having a holding company for the purpose of holding and buying properties, and a real estate free zone company for the purpose of just managing the holding company.
Yeah.
And so the timeline for this type of setup, it could take about a month and a half, sometimes 2 months.
It's not that bad really, is it though?
But the funny thing is, by the way, the reason why it takes that long is because of the bank accounts. Yep. Now the license itself can be issued within 10 days. And I'm just going to run into the procedure and the process of what that looks like, by the way, so that you're aware of it and the clients as well. So the process can start remotely. So the clients don't have to be in the UAE for that. So the business license takes roughly about 10 to 15 days. Mm-hmm. Once that's issued, they then have to come for their UAE residency, which is the second part. Now, that means they have to be here for about a week and a half. To get their biometrics and medical done. But in that entirety of a week and a half, we probably need them for about 1 or 2 hours. you know? So why not just enjoy the city and kick back?
It's not a bad place to come in.
Absolutely not. A week and a half. Sometimes in some cases it gets done in 3 to 4 days, but we're dealing with the UAE immigration. So, you know, sometimes things could take that long. Then once that's done, the final and the last stage, which is the third part, is setting up your corporate bank account. Now, as I mentioned, the free zone license and the UAE residency can all be done within 20 to 25 days, but then it will take about 3 weeks to 5 weeks to set up your corporate bank account. And that is genuinely the most difficult part. And
Okay. So I want to just interrupt there because a lot of my clients, I advise this, you know, based on obviously our conversations. You know, let's say my clients have bought off-plan properties, right? They're going to be ready in a year. So within that next year, I suggest at some point, maybe 6 to 8 months before the off-plan properties are completed, to actually start looking at getting a corporate business set up over here in order to start funneling money into that business account. So therefore, when they actually, you know, are residents, they've got a great track record of putting money into their bank account every single month consistently. When the properties are ready, and let's say, you know, they want to finance the remaining of the off-plan when it's almost completed, or for example, refinancing it, they can go for the residency mortgage, get higher, you know, a higher loan to value, and also a better rate on the mortgages. So, you know, that's just wanted to check that's how it's done, right?
Absolutely. The only thing is the only thing I would say differently to this is that if they're coming to buy properties in the UAE and if it's off plan, why wouldn't you want to have a setup from the get-go? You know, because a lot of the off-plan properties won't allow you to have a UAE residency. I mean, you're aware of the whole golden visa, right? So the property has to be ready, has to be 2 million, non-financed. It needs to have a title deed and up to 2 million plus. Only then you can get a UAE residency. So a lot of the clients that are coming to the UAE to buy off-plan properties are not basically subject to having a golden residency. So instead, the way around that would be to set up a company, have your residencies, have your corporate bank account, start maintaining your bank account and those transactions from the start. Because a year from that specific incorporation date, they can basically get financing for their businesses.
100%. That's how I say it to everybody, you know, in order to, you know, really build a portfolio successfully out here. If you are going down the off-plan route and in the future going to the banks, it's 100% worth getting a business structure set up so that you can actually take advantage of the leverage that the bank can give you. So you can actually double your portfolio.
Not only that, you know, there's so many variables to this. Let's assume that, you know, someone has bought the property, and I've mentioned that previously before. Someone's bought the property and their personal circumstances just changed. Now they need cash. So they want to sell that off-plan property. They're not going to want that money back to the UK or elsewhere. But if they had a corporate bank account in place from the start, they can immediately just, you know, have that funds deposited back into the UAE bank account. And just like any bank account in the world, they have a debit card, they have a checkbook, they have online banking. So me personally, I'm a huge advocate of having a setup from the start. Now, there's multiple phases to this. You could have the setup for the purpose of buying properties from the start, but then let's assume that you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 properties, right? The second goal here is how do you basically protect your assets? So that comes later. That would be something that I would ask your clients to do maybe a year from today or 2 years from today, assuming that the properties are ready. So, you know, we're looking at, in terms of protecting assets, you're looking at basically foundation, essentially is one of the most popular route that people take. Not trust, but foundation. We could probably cover that
in its own video, right?
In its own video, what are the differences and why foundations are a lot more favorable. But in essence, you're looking at, you know, protecting yourself from probate, protecting yourself from, divorce, I suppose. Legacy planning is essential because it's really easy to make money, but it's not, a lot of people don't think about ways of protecting that money. You know, you're basically offloading all those funds, bringing them into the UAE. People don't understand that the UAE falls within a Sharia compliant zone, which is very different. They probably would want a different type of legacy planning. They probably, you know, I think it's very important. Obviously, we cover these things and we help clients with such planning. But that comes later once they have a company, once they have a setup in the UAE.
For sure. And I think the main thing somebody who's watching this needs to take away is that, you know, after what you've just said, why would it not make sense to actually work with somebody who can actually give you all of this factual information? Like I can advise people on getting the business and corporate setups, you know, and that's when I refer them to yourself. But then, you know, with the in-depth knowledge you guys have about the Sharia laws, about legacy planning, about protecting your wealth and your assets, all of this stuff is so important. You know, you can't just assume, which I think a lot of people do sometimes. They just assume, oh, it's just like everywhere else. But what about, like, you know, if you were going to die, who's the property going to go into?
And it happens, by the way.
I know.
Honestly.
You know, although we like to think that we're not going to keel over and die tomorrow, it's very important to know that, well, if I do, then this property that I've bought in the Middle East, where's it going to go? Who's it going to go to?
You have a peace of mind. You can sleep peacefully at night.
Yeah, because these are all things that people need to consider. And I think, like I say, it's very important that you work with very serious people in this part. And in one of the videos, we're actually going to cover, you know, the benefits of working with somebody and paying that extra little bit for a premium service over actually working with these sort of low quality people who don't really care so much. And I think that's one of the main things out here for sure. Okay, so let's finish this video off in a moment. But one of the things I wanted to just ask you, what does the aftercare look like? So once somebody's set up a business, give me a little bit of structure around like what comes after it, you know?
Sure. So essentially, think of us, Nimbus Consultancy, as a one-stop shop. So we are a corporate service provider. We'll help you with the setup in the UAE, but then we'll basically maintain that in terms of whatever it is that you would need to maintain a good standing company. So now your accountancy, your bookkeeping, your quarterly audits, you know, registering yourself with the corporate tax, registering you with the VAT essentially. So everything is essentially in-house. We have our own finance team. We have our own banking team. You'll have a dedicated account manager that will manage every single thing that you need, assuming that you need to change, you know, a memorandum of articles or, you know, different documentations. We basically cater to all of those needs for our clientele. Now, the aftercare, once you set up the company, you have your annual renewals that you would have to pay, which is the business license. Every 2 years, you would have to pay for your medical renewals again, which is your residency. So every 2 years is UAE residency renewal. Every year is your business license renewal. That's pretty much about it. That's the core major aftercare that you would have to do for the business that you own. Everything else after that is an ongoing thing, such as accountancy, bookkeeping, and finance. Obviously, it really depends on the type of transactions you're doing, the number of transactions that you're doing. And again, we do have an in-house team that can look into these cases based on, you know, specific client requests.
Amazing. All right, so guys, we're going to leave that video here. Amin, once again, thank you so much. As always, if anybody wants to get their business licenses set up and potentially look at setting up one of these structures, then you know exactly where to go. Just follow the link in the description below. And we'll see you in the next video, guys. Thank you very much, mate.
Pleasure.
How many minutes?
15.
Okay, that's fine.